Hello, welcome to Our Humbled Hearts. I'm Beth Tiger, and joining me is my dear friend, Susan Merrick. We are two women who returned home to our Catholic faith after more than 2 decades immersed in the New Age movement. We invite you to join us as we boldly explore what it is to live a Christ-centered life in a post-Christian world. This will be a fun, messy, joy-filled journey as we allow Jesus to take the wheel. Hey, Susan, we're back.
Hi, Beth. Here we are.
Having some beverage happiness today. I've got my
Oh,
Do Not Make Me Go to
excellent.
Confession and my Mary water bottle, feeling very happy and content.
Don't make me have to go to confession.
Oh, yeah, this is the best cup you ever bought me. I look at it and think, I need to go to confession for all the judgy thoughts I just had. But I think we should start where we left off. When I informed you that you're not a goddess, how did you feel about that?
Oh, I was disappointed. Actually, I never actually thought of myself as a goddess, but I did think that there was goddess energy out there. Never worshipped a goddess per se, but recognized that other people did, and hey, that's okay. Everybody has their thing, right? But I mean, when I was doing new agey stuff, I was using goddess decks.
Me too.
And yeah, I'm going to cross myself again because I thank God, truly, God help me, because it brings up a lot of shame. And that's part of what we're going to talk about today. Not shame, but how did we get there? In
Yeah.
you look back on it, and boy, it's kind of a wild ride.
Well, it certainly was. But one of the things too is that we got to this point of feeling like, oh, this isn't right, because it was a process for us.
Yeah.
And realizing that the creator of all things, like women and men are made in the image of the creator. So the typical DIY spirituality, new agey thing really rips that apart. And it's like divine masculine, divine feminine, instead of God the creator. But I'd like to kind of start at the beginning. You and I were both born Catholic, and I think telling the story of why, what our faith journey was. I mean, we were, I think, both brought up in Catholic homes doing all the things and left it. So I think that has value. And, I think you sharing your journey and myself giving everybody a little bit of that is also going to help people to understand why we're here and why we want to share this journey with others.
Yeah, absolutely. I did a lot of thinking and praying before we recorded this episode because I knew that I'd be talking about my story and my origin story, backstory. How did we get here? How did I get here? And it is, upon reflection, a very interesting story. And I look back on the person that I was even 4 years ago and think, who are you? What was going on in your head? But
Me
even
too.
going back further, yeah, baptized Catholic, is a 3-week old, and then you do all the things, right? You do the first reconciliation, and you do your first communion, and then you do your confirmation, and you go to CCD or religious ed, and I even went to Catholic girls' high school.
Wow.
And I remember taking Old Testament and New Testament and, all that kind of stuff, the sacraments. I remember absolutely nothing of my time either in school or even in religious ed. I know that I was influenced by it. I know that we went to church and, you go to church almost every Sunday. And then you go, obviously, your big holidays, Christmas and Easter, and sometimes say grace at mealtime, but I, upon reflection, don't really feel like I was catechized well, or at least I didn't retain it.
Me neither.
Because I remember in high school, here I am going Catholic girls' high school and going to just a friend's house for a party and not a rager, anything like that, just to get together. And I was playing with tarot cards. So, but yet here I am. I'm going to church. I didn't think anything of it. It was just something, different to do, fun to do. Read some non-Catholic texts, just interesting, like meditative, books. And they, looking back, they were not. They were a totally different spiritual path that I thought was really interesting. But again, didn't even give it a second thought. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit to having my children. I had something called what I call a technicolor dream, which is a dream in which you can feel and smell and touch, like your senses are just on incredible high alert. You're immersed in your environment in this dream. And I was being carried through my childhood home by two angels. It was magnificent. I mean, everything was just, I was really hypersensitized to the environment. And I remember everything, the texture of the carpet, which was that really nasty green 1970-ish carpet. It was bad. But anyway, having this dream, and the angels are carrying me through my house, and it was so interesting. And I get into the family room, and my family, my friends, were in the living room waiting for me. And the angels announced to everyone, including myself, that I'm pregnant. And I thought, oh my gosh. And the bliss, the only word is bliss or ecstasy, for the feelings that I had around being with these angelic beings.
May I ask you,
was this
prior to your first?
Yes.
Oh,
We
wow.
had tried for about 7 years for me to get pregnant. I had a miscarriage, and then we tried for 7 years. So this was obviously very exciting
Well,
news
yeah.
if it was true. And it was, because I got up and it wasn't an hour later that I had my husband in the car, and we're going to Target. And we're getting the pregnancy test, and it would have been so early in the pregnancy. And it turns out I was pregnant. So I had my son and my babies. After that, I always had a dream announcing the pregnancy. Never got a great Technicolor dream after that. It was always just, it was always just
I was
the
going to say,
dream
wait a
saying,
minute,
you're
I didn't have a
pregnant.
dream. I didn't get a dream.
So
That's pretty great.
the reason I tell that story, I used to tell that story when I was doing new agey things for a different reason, which I'll get into later. But the reason I tell this is because this was really my first big encounter with God, because angels are messengers from God. And I had had a dream of Jesus at one point in my childhood, and he met me at a picnic table of all places. I don't remember him talking to me, but I just remember seeing him there. So this is my big first experience, and I picked up a book by Doreen Virtue, who is known as the Angel Lady. She is now, since 2017, denounced all of
Yeah.
her previous New Agey endeavors, and is now a born-again Christian, has gone to divinity school and such. So,
She's an
but
interesting follow. Anybody interested
she
should
really
definitely
is.
check
She
her out.
really
Yeah, for
is.
sure.
And so I picked up a book by her, and I thought, wow, she's had similar experiences to me as with angels, and she does this and she does that. And I went to see her speak, and I was enthralled, because I was like, she gets me. She totally gets me. And then I began reading more and more and more, as much as I could. So I eventually came to the conclusion that the Bible was just something created by men to tell a story that they wanted to tell, and that I had not a lot of faith that God had a hand in it, which is appalling to me now. But it's how I felt at the time. And I felt religion, organized religion, no thank you. I am so much more elevated than that now. I've had this angelic experience. I'm taught, God is sending me messages, and God did send me a message. But I, I didn't take it the wrong way. I just took it a little too far. And I wasn't a very good listener. Now, I did have my children baptized. We were going to church. And then the whole thing about the Bible, kind of iffy there. Interesting stories, but not really a lot of substance for me, because I can talk directly to God. That God and I can have our own relationship outside of an organized religion.
Yeah,
So
me too.
then with Doreen, I decided I was going to become an angel therapy practitioner. So I was going to talk with the angels and help people. So I did genuinely think I was helping people connect with their angels, which were messengers from God. Not an excuse for my behavior. I'm still really ashamed. And I could have that shame and still know I'm forgiven, because I know I am. But I kept on going. Angel therapy practitioner, basically doing psychic readings. And then I did advanced angel therapy practicing. And I did mediumship. I was talking to dead people. Again, thank God, help me. Thank God that I got out of that, because that opens up a whole nother can of worms that I don't want to talk about here, but
But
not
we are
good.
gonna, but we are gonna talk
We
about
are.
that, because I
We
do think
will.
that I think it's really important for people to have an understanding of why those things don't serve people,
Right.
and what possibly can happen when you're involved in that world. Sorry
Absolutely.
to
No, no,
interject, but
no,
I think
no,
it's
thank you.
important.
We will. We will talk
Mhm.
about it. Yeah, I'm not avoiding talking about it, but that is a much longer story and a much longer learning,
That's an episode.
an
It's
episode
an
on its
episode for
own.
sure. Hmm. Yeah.
Just to fast forward a little bit, teaching people to do pendulum, using a pendulum, or crystals, and the tools, the angel cards or the tarot cards, all those things. I did all those things, and that brings us basically to where we left off in our introductory podcast about we were still searching. Even after we're doing all the things as the experts, we were still searching and feeling unsettled. And thankfully, again, thank God, truly, literally, I was guided to stop doing my readings. And I thought, well, that's really interesting, because I thought I was helping people. But okay, God, if you want me to stop doing my readings, yes, He did, then I
Please,
will.
please.
I think it was more I finally got in tune, and I picked up the phone. But anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing those things, and even selling my books at your wellness centers. And please, if anyone out there has my books, just throw them in the trash. Truly, throw them in the trash. And if you haven't read my books, please don't go buy them and do them or read them. I have pulled them out of publication, and I just hope that they fade off into the sunset without any fanfare whatsoever. So, again, I'm doing these things, at your wellness center. And
Yes.
how did you get to the wellness center? What's your origin story?
Oh wow. Well, that is first of all, that is such an incredible journey, because I think it's very similar, Susan, to what a lot of people have gone through who are our age. We're closer to 60 than we are to 50. And I think, well, you know what? We're in it. Let's be proud.
I know. I'm
you
just
know?
being silly.
But I think in the after Vatican II and, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, I think that the Catholic faith that we were both born into was really trying to reinvent itself. So even though I, like you, was baptized, uh, went to reconciliation, had communion, was confirmed, I was just poorly catechized. And I liken it to, a 65, 70-year-old woman trying to be 30. Just, the Catholic Church was trying to be young and hip instead of embracing the fact that they were older and wiser, that they had gone through some terrible, shameful things in their lifespan and could learn and own it. I think there was this whole, I mean, with the scandals that were happening, I think there was this whole desire to be something new. And in that, a lot of people fell away from the church. And part of that is because, even for myself, I didn't really truly have an understanding of what the Eucharist was, what the Mass was. So people will say, oh, well, you're a cradle Catholic, so you know. And I'm like, no way, I do not know. Actually, it's harder because I know those old prayers. And so when I go into the new church, I don't even have any idea.
But didn't
But
you sort of? I know I'm interrupting you here, and I
no,
apologize for
interrupt.
that. But didn't you kind of think you knew what
Oh, sure.
what Catholicism was all about?
Well, I think that's
Because we've
that's the
talked about
thing.
this.
Yes, I think that's actually the crux. Like being like I was born Catholic, so I got to judge it. I was like, confession. Why would I confess to a man? They're saying this piece of bread becomes Jesus's body. There's these scandals because this is a man-made religion. It's not spiritual. But to bring you back, when I was a child, little child, I was very devout. I loved going to Mass. I loved going to CCD. My mother was a devout Catholic and really loved the Eucharist, would talk to all of us about God, Mary. She was devoted to Mary. And when I was 8 years old, I had a vision of, not a vision, I woke up on Easter morning and Jesus was sitting in my bedroom.
Oh my
And
gosh,
it was golden light. And I got out of the bed and walked over and sat on his lap. I mean, it was just so weird. And I turned around
amazing.
because my brother was sleeping in the lower bunk bed to wake him up to tell him Jesus was here. And I got up and went to get him and turned around and he was gone.
Oh,
And I know. So to this day, I feel like what a gift. And I carried that through my whole life and still became an expert in the New Age. Oh, so, but my mother believed me. My other five siblings, well, four. My brother Michael believed me, but he just felt like he got ripped off and didn't get to see Jesus.
was he in the lower bunk?
He was in the lower bunk.
Yeah, I can understand that then.
Yeah, exactly. Made me sleep at the top. I could have fallen out. But, anyway, I kept going to church and thinking, should I be a nun? I want to do something for God. And then we had a tragedy in our family, and I lost my brother, and it really shattered our family for a few years. My mother was incredible during that time. But, I'm a teenager and I'm thinking, why would God do this? And I had a ton of questions and I didn't have people to talk to. And so I just started seeking outside. I started going into bookstores and I walked into another store called Under the Stars and thought, oh, they were like, if you pick up this crystal, it's for love and for healing. And if you read this book, you can heal your own life. You don't need to go to you don't need to be religious. You can do it yourself. And that really started me on my journey. I was reading voraciously. Like I was just reading anything I could get my hands on. I read all kinds of books about the goddess. And so I felt this separation about within my religious upbringing. Like everything felt so male centered. And my mother and I would get into these debates, but I would tell her, no way. There's no room in this faith for a woman. Only men can be priests and Jesus only had 12 disciples and Jesus was just a master. He's not God incarnate. Oh, I cringe when I say that, and I will cross myself too. But, again, it started me on this journey of DIY Christianity and spirituality. I liked to believe that I was spiritual but not religious anymore. I no longer needed to be follow anything organized to be connected to God. And
Yep.
so, I mean, I'm reading all kinds of spirituality and saying, how can you say it's one place? It's Christianity. There's all these other traditions around the world. We're all one, we're all united, the way you meet God. And I have to say, I do feel like there's pathways to get to Christ. I don't know everybody's journey, but I can say for myself that I kept seeking this connection with God in Christ, but I was doing it my own way, and that's where the big failure was. I opened up wellness centers, I was coaching people, I was even doing a divorce support workshop in a Catholic church, and I wrote a book and told people, you can do your own Christianity. And I can't believe it today. Uh, because everything I was doing, I wanted to do for God, but I was really doing it my own way. And, you know, looking at archetypes, reading about Egyptian spirituality and going, huh, the Jesus story is just like Isis and Osiris.
Yeah.
Oh, and it wasn't until I want to say 2018 when I was doing all of these things and they were successful, but they weren't great. I would try something, it would go so far, and then it, not even for other people, but for me, I was like, this isn't it. And then I would pivot and I would do something else. And I, switched my shop around and I founded the nonprofit to help, those that are trafficked, but I named it after a Hindu goddess, even though I never even vibed. I never even connected. And I use that word vibed on purpose, with that faith. It was just this, it's almost, again, this DIYing was really sacrilegious to even other traditions. It was like, well, I love to smudge, and that's Native American, and I want to meditate and do yoga, and I don't even have to honor the Hindu faith, and I want to have a Buddha in my yard, but I'm not Buddhist, but that's so grounded. And when in 2018, when I was traveling for the nonprofit, I went to Thailand and there were these huge signs like, please do not buy a Buddha if you're not Buddhist. It's sacrilegious, it's dishonoring our tradition. And I was thinking on my way home, I was on a long flight, thinking, wow, like what does that mean for all of the things that I'm selling in my shop? You know, it's like this picking and choosing, and it actually felt gross. And I just started to consider, what is it that I'm doing here? Why am I doing this? And part of the reason why I was doing it is I wanted to do it my way. It was like, well, if this crystal is going to give me inner peace, then I want this crystal. And if this meditation is going to, give me health and abundance, then I want that. And if this healer or this person who's downloading or whatever that's called,
Channeling.
channeling,
Yeah.
is going to help me to manifest $1 million, then I want it. And it became sort of clear that everything I was doing was always about me. Like my spirituality was always about it benefiting me, getting the great relationship, getting the abundance, getting, whatever, the health. All of it was about what was good for me. And I started doing things like watching and listening to The Case for Christ. And I went, oh, maybe the Bible isn't just fake. Maybe it isn't just, because I was like, why isn't Mary Magdalene, the apostle, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and, Philip. But when I started doing that, I recognized that perhaps there's something to this, perhaps there's something to this Christ God thing. But on the flip side, I still wanted to do it my own way. And that does lead me to when you and I, you know, connected. I mean, obviously we were connected for 15 years, but when we decided to do this 33 days to morning glory, for almost 5 years, I had been in this quiet time. I had gone through a ton of struggles, and all the tools I had, every tool I had, astrology, crystals, pendulums, Reiki, channeled material, none of it was working. And we also lived through COVID, and I looked at people during COVID and I thought, the one thing people are freaking out about is dying because they don't feel like there's something more for them afterward. And yeah, so tons of contemplation. And then we get to this, well, I'll try anything because all these tools here don't work.
Right.
But, it goes to this idea of worshiping the creation instead of the creator, deifying
True.
ourselves, I'm the goddess, or I can download, I'm a divine being. And I just not only was looking at myself, but I was looking around and I was thinking, it's leaving so many people unhappy and dissatisfied. There's so much depression and anxiety, and none of it was really working. So, I mean, I feel like at the point when we decided to do that 33 days to morning glory, I was like the woman at the well, and that's a story in the Bible who goes to the well and she's going to try something else. She's going to draw out more water because she's thirsty. And I was always thirsty. I always wanted to connect with God. And Jesus was there. And of course, I'm sure Mary was next to him, like, go talk to her. And it just, yeah, it was the beginning of the true transformation of my life. And
I've
realizing,
heard.
right, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
No.
realizing too that I didn't need any of those other things. That
Yeah.
was the most amazing thing for me. I didn't need to pay somebody for a secret. I didn't need to buy one more tool. Jesus came
Yeah.
for every single person. It's free. You know what I mean? It's pretty
Yeah.
incredible. So,
It
yeah.
it is. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sharing all of that. I've heard bits and pieces, but it's always amazing to hear you tell your story because there are things that I have never heard before
Same with
that
you.
I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And one of the conversations that you and I have had a lot is upon reflection of our stint in the New Age, being experts and all,
Yeah.
what was missing. Like the New Age is so attractive. It is so attractive
Ugh.
because it feels empowering. You're in control, but it's exhausting because you're in control, and you're not. It's an illusion. It's an illusion of control. We actually don't have any control, and no
No.
amount of mantras or crystals or readings or Reiki is going to solve your problem. And I know that, just going back to the one thing that we thought was missing, is God. God was the missing piece. Like we were doing all these things, like, oh, I'm doing these readings for people and they're so great. And I'm talking to their deceased loved ones and it's so great. And I'm doing Reiki and it's just so great, isn't it? Is it so great? I mean, I think people are getting something from it, but yet you feel lack, like, and you feel out of control. And that's because there is no God in it. There is
Right.
no true God, Father, Son, Holy Spirit in there. And that was kind of a mind blowing revelation for me once we started doing the 33 days to morning glory, but not even at 33 days of morning glory were we quite there yet. We were still doing
No.
our thing. And
It was the
you,
catechism for me, for
yeah,
sure, right?
yeah,
And for you, I think.
yeah, 100%. It was the catechism. But even before the catechism, we were on our way and Our Lady was having her way with us. And she was, leading us to Jesus. And Jesus is, of course, welcoming with open arms. We're like, oh, thank you for taking the wheel. We can relax. We aren't in control, kind of thing. But what made you get the catechism? Because you were I was the impetus behind the 33 days. And then we wanted to continue on. And you're like, let's do the catechism.
Well, from 2018, I started really contemplating um, Jesus. Like I said, I listened to A Case for Christ. I was beginning to read things about a Christ-centered, and I was really feeling like our world had become not centered on Christ. However, I really did like wearing the badge of being spiritual and not religious. I mean, I did. I kind of wore that as a badge of honor, like I'm those religious people and all their rules. So because also I really enjoyed the DIY part of it. I was going to pick and choose because ultimately it was about me when I was praying. I was praying for things that I needed, my inner peace, or for people I loved. But I wasn't thinking, you know, even though I was like, God, I want to serve you. Ultimately, it was like, I want to serve you, but please don't, send me to, some hard place and make me like it just had, I had a lot of rules.
You had a lot
So
of conditions that
I
needed
had
to
a
be
lot of
met in order to
conditions.
do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know
But
that
it
feeling.
but the thing too is I was praying. And I have to say sometimes I think my mother's having the last laugh in heaven because she was always like, "Hey, you'll find your way back to God." And she was so devout. And at the time, my mom in 2022 was at the very end of her, of her life. And she was actually right before she passed, she knew all of her prayers and she didn't know any of us. And I thought, wow, there's something to that. And she just had this peace about herself in a way. And so I was listening to podcasts because I had all kinds of time. That's what I'm saying. I was again seeking, always seeking, thirsty, praying to
Yeah.
God. But like you, if you really are praying to God and you're like, please, at that point, we had gone through an incredible tragedy in our family. And I was like, none of this is working. None of this stuff I'm doing is working.
Yep.
And I, please God, make me new. And he was like, okay, well, if you really mean
If
it,
you insist.
if you insist, I'm going to kick you right off the couch. You want to
I
get hit with the
know.
whammy stick. And that's so I was listening to a podcast
Yeah.
and it said, it was just like a little, and somebody's like, oh, I'm on this Hallow app. And so I got the Hallow app, and then Hallow started talking about the Catechism in a year, and I thought, huh, I'm going to debunk this Catholic faith. That's really, I kind of thought, maybe I could look for a church. I started like going to churches, all these different churches, and I was like going to the ones with the big concerts, and I'm down in South Carolina going, yeah, this is cool. This is weird. Like I just couldn't, and so I bought the Catechism, the December of 2022, and just sat in my drawer. So after we did the Morning Glory, I knew that I wanted to read the Catechism, but I wouldn't have done it alone. And that again is the reason why we're doing this podcast. I wouldn't have done it alone. I had so many rules and I wanted to do it my way. I had, as we said in the last episode, no confession, no this, no that.
Yep.
And, you know, when we started the Catechism and I began reading things and I was like, oh, that's like, what I wish I didn't do this or I wish I didn't do that. One of the things I did realize was I was always seeking, but I was seeking with not my heart, with my ego. And that is edging God out. Ego,
Yep.
And so one of the things that really like was an aha moment was in Catechism in a Year when Father Mike said, every time you get the desire to pray, you're picking up the phone for your parent. And I'm a mom, and I can't tell you how many times I call my kids and they don't pick up the phone. And when they do, I'm like, hi, how are you? What's going on? I'm so happy. And so I thought, I'm picking up the phone. Wait, so God is always like tapping my shoulder. He's always calling me. He's always yearning to connect. And it was the opposite of me going like, well, when every time I pray, I'm talking to God. It's like, no. Every time I get the urge to pray, I'm finally hearing the phone because
Right.
I'm the child. I'm not the goddess.
Right. Exactly. It is truly humbling, and hence
Yeah.
our humbled hearts. I know
What about for you? Like when you did the cat, like when you started, did you have an aha moment?
Sort of. Um, I remember you encouraging the catechism. I'm like, I mean, I want to do something regularly because I'm really growing, and I loved our time together. I loved what Our Lady put us through in a very good way, a wonderful way. So I wanted to continue on, but my aha moment came after we had already made the declaration of we're not going to mass. We are definitely not going to confession, and we are going to look at this. And I don't think we actually said, let's pick it apart, but we were very skeptical. And we thought, okay, but we'll do it. My aha moment was page 1 of the catechism. It was the first day. Started out with a mind blowing experience of reading the catechism and just thinking, this is the most esoteric book I have ever read. You
Amen.
know, out of all the books. And you had alluded to this earlier about how you had really been humbled by, you know, life, things going on in your life and tragedy. And I had a few things that had happened at the same time. And you and I, you know, we're talking about it as well. And we were totally brought to our knees. And this is before we even did the 33 days to morning glory. But
Yeah.
I really believe that, you know, we were in a place, we had been humbled. And even though we were still doing our new agey stuff, you said it so beautifully earlier that we were thirsty. We were still seeking. And I love seeking. I love, at this point, it's not seeking anymore, you know, seeking God. It's a deepening of relationship for me. And that really started with Our Lady, because she is the great intercessor, mediatrix for us. But also, that first page just blew me away with the amount of love that is expressed from the get-go with the catechism. And I couldn't wait to continue on, especially with Father Mike, who I said in the last episode, he does such a beautiful job guiding and mentoring you through the catechism. And I'm really excited to do it again.
Yes, I am too. We're going to be starting shortly. We're
Yeah.
because we are novices and we're still, like you said, not necessarily seeking, but learning. Now it does feel like a deepening instead
Yeah.
of a seeking. But that journey really did, it didn't give me something new. I feel like it transformed me into something new. And
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
it was such a unique experience. And like you, the catechism was the most esoteric piece of literature I have ever read. And that goes back to why the Catholic Church shouldn't try to be the 30-year-old woman. it's got wisdom and tradition and grace and age, and it's just so deep and profound.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. So I think that this has really been a long episode, and I feel like why, how we left the New Age and what that looks like now for us needs to be a different episode because there's so much to that. But there
Absolutely.
is a part of the catechism that for you and I think was kind of like the final component because we were well into the catechism, still doing all of our things when we got to this part in the catechism. And then this, I think, became the pivot point. And I think perhaps we should end it. Maybe you could read this part of the catechism, and then in the next episode, we'll discuss how we got out of the New Age and what life looks like for us now. And we'll go from there.
I would love to do that. So I'm going to read two parts from the Catechism. Like you said, Beth, were really pivotal passages for us leaving the New Age. So the first one is 21:16. All forms of divination are to be rejected. Recourse to Satan or demons, conjuring up the dead, or other practices falsely supposed to unveil the future, consulting horoscopes, astrology, palm reading, interpretation of omens and lots, the phenomenon of clairvoyance, and recourse to mediums all conceal a desire for power over time, history, and, in the last analysis, other human beings, as well as a wish to conciliate hidden powers. They contradict the honor, respect, and loving fear that we owe to God alone. And then it goes on to say in 21:17, all practices of magic or sorcery, by which one attempts to tame occult powers so as to place them at one's service and have a supernatural power over others, even if this were for the sake of restoring their health, are gravely contrary to the virtue of religion. These practices are even more to be condemned when accompanied by the intention of harming someone, or when they have recourse to the intervention of demons. Wearing charms is also reprehensible. Spiritism often implies divination or magical practices. The Church, for her part, warns the faithful against it. Recourse to so-called traditional cures does not justify either the invocation of evil powers or the exploitation of another's credulity. There we go.
So, I mean, it says it all, but one of the most important things for me that it does say is we are not goddesses or gods.
Nope.
It is so important to turn to God instead of turning to ourselves. The deifying of the creation instead of the creator, I think, is where we got lost. So until next time.
Until next time, but I would love for you to end it with the prayer that is in the outro. I really feel like we kind of ended it on a pretty heavy note, and I would just kind of like to wrap it in a nice little package.
Well, this was taught to me when I was a child by my mom, and she used to say, may Jesus walk beside you, may God be your guide, may the Holy Spirit fill you, and may your angels protect you.
Oh,
always.
Amen to that.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. We shall see you for New Age Part 2.
Part 2? Ooh, very French of you. Okay, I'll see you then.
All right, see you.
Thank you for joining us. If you have questions, wish to share a faith story, or just want to ask for a specific prayer request, please DM us on Instagram or Facebook. May God go before you, Christ walk beside you. May the Holy Spirit fill you, and your angels protect you. Until next time, God bless.